You're listening to the Wilmac Wire, the podcast that's designed to give you a glimpse into a growing SaaS company, specifically in the realm of customer interaction technology. From customer experience to data management, we'll talk about it here. Thank you for tuning in.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Wilmac Wire. And yes, I say that every time because you know what? I'm not sure when you're listening to this, and I think it's an appropriate introduction. I've kind of just gotten to this point. I don't know where to go. Anyway, my name is Emily Miller from Wilmac Technologies, and I'm here with you on Season 2, Episode 10 of the Wilmac Wire, just to hit you with some quick fun facts. Like I said, Season 2, Episode 10. This is the 32nd episode in our Wilmac Wire series. I've spoken to 19 guests during that tenure. We've been at it over a year now, and I'm really excited to line up some really awesome guests in the coming months. But for this episode, I'm going to take an opportunity to level with you. You know, I thought to myself the other day, I can talk about Wilmac all day long. How about I try an episode without a guest? Now, I'm not going to bore you with talking about Wilmac all day long, even though the name of our company is in the title of our podcast. But we know that you, the listener, you're the hero of the story when it comes to customer interaction data. The call recordings, emails, web chats, videos, SMS text messages that go in through your call center, that go into your trading floors, into your 911 centers. Wilmac is just here to guide you, to get you to that success. And we just happen to operate in an area that's super specific. It's super niche. You might have found that some episodes resonated and some episodes didn't. That's okay. They're not for everyone. But I appreciate all of you that are here today with me and get to listen to me talk by myself for a while. But we're going to embrace that niche today and talk about a few objections that we're navigating in our area of expertise. We're going to talk about why Wilmac is here. We're going to talk about a common objection that we face when we're talking about continuity replay in the form of an S3 bucket is that objection. And then I'm also going to touch on a term that we're seeing thrown out more in our industry called Digital Communications Governance and Archiving, otherwise known as DCGA. So I've got a couple things lined up for us to chat about, or for you to listen to me chat with myself about. Wow, that's a mouthful right there. And I will warn that you might hear a little bit of rustling paper. Like I said, I'm hosting this episode alone today, so I had to take notes. I'm a notes person. So I've got my notes in front of me and we'll get right to it. So before we get into the more technical stuff, I want to talk about why we're here and what Wilmac is built to do. So Wilmac, I think in one of my previous episodes, I talked about Wilmac's history and how we got here. Now, just as a very brief recap, we exist to solve an overlooked challenge when it comes to CX, customer experience, and compliance. How organizations manage and activate their customer interaction data. The type of data I called out before: call recordings, web chats, emails, text messages, screen recordings. The list goes on. And we've called it out in our previous episodes when I've spoken with Charlie, with Bob, with Steve. Our specialty and how we got into this line of business lies in voice data, call recordings specifically. That being said, that data is unstructured. It's more difficult to access, but it's a gold mine. Whether you have an indefinite retention period on that data and it's sitting in a legacy system somewhere, or the data is happening live in a modern contact center, it's all part of that same story. And call recordings, like I said, it's a gold mine. If you've seen the Salesforce commercials with Matthew McConaughey and he's in the desert and they talk about how data is gold. It's a similar situation here. But the issue that we come to see over and over again is if you can't see that data, if you can't search that data, if you can't use that data, it's not an asset, it's a liability. But this thing is a gold mine. But in that case, when you can't access it, it's a liability. So our mission at Wilmac is to make that data visible, to make it usable and secure. Not just storing it, not just checking a box off on the compliance list, but making it available across systems, across teams, across time, so that you can do something with it because it's yours, right? And our business is built on the fact that the big on-prem systems that we're talking about, NICE, Verint, Calabrio, Genesis, They lock your data in proprietary and encrypted formats. So you have to pay them more to access it, or you have to pay your own time, resources, and weigh the risk of maintaining that legacy system on your own. So as we start to see more and more of our listeners like you migrate off these on-prem systems to the cloud, but they're subject to retention regulations, you're stuck in a tough position. And personally, we don't think that's fair at Wilmac. So our goal is to make, again, that data available to you, to make it visible, usable, and secure. So that means helping a compliance team respond to a legal request in minutes, not days, to enable a contact center manager to audit a conversation for coaching, preparing for AI enablement down the road with a clean, accessible foundation. That's a big one, AI buzzword. But while a lot of technology vendors in our industry are focused on building the next new and shiny platform, we're over here making sure that your core infrastructure that powers all of that actually works and is setting you up for success. You can't modernize your customer experience if your data is trapped. You can't scale AI if your recordings are locked up and inaccessible. You can't protect your brand or your customers if you don't have a handle on what's being said across your different channels. And this is what we mean when we talk about modernizing CX from the core. We're talking about the data that is going to fuel your strategy, especially coming from that contact center scenario. So that's my spiel. My spiel on Wilmac and why we're here and what we've been built for. So the next thing that I'm going to transition to so eloquently, as you can tell, is S3 buckets. Like I said, a common objection that we Wilmac tend to face when we're talking about continuity replay, which if you listened to one of my most recent episodes, it was with Bob Pease, our VP of engineering, where we talked about the new updates being made to continuity replay. This is our flagship solution that was built from customer requests that revolves around that whole spiel I just gave on what we've been built for. So for this section, I'm going to talk about debunking the myth that an S3 bucket is a viable substitute for a solution like continuity replay. We've heard it fairly often, honestly, from large organizations that are subject to retention regulations. So they have to maintain their customer interaction data and keep it accessible for a certain period of time. That could be 3 years, it could be 7 years, it could be infinite years. So they commonly ask us, why not just store our interaction data in an S3 bucket? Now, at face value, that sounds like a decent option. S3 is scalable, it's inexpensive, it's a place to put that data. But that's the thing. An S3 bucket is just storage. It's a big digital box. That's it. Putting your customer interaction data in an S3 bucket does not give you searchability. It doesn't give you tagging or metadata. It doesn't give you role-based access controls to make sure it's secure and it being accessed by the correct people. Doesn't give you legal hold or audit trails. It doesn't give you discovery workflows. It definitely doesn't give you a user-friendly interface for compliance, legal, or QA teams. So essentially, you're tossing your interaction data into a bucket, S3 bucket, funny, but hoping that when someone needs to find something from last week or from 5, 10, 15 years ago, it'll somehow be easy to get to. Spoiler alert. It's not. And worse, you're often creating future risk. What happens when you need to prove chain of custody on a call? Or what happens when regulators ask how you're protecting or managing sensitive customer conversations? What happens when a manager needs 20 calls tagged with a specific issue and your storage layer has zero visibility? This is why continuity replay exists. We're big believers in creating value through simplicity. But in our opinion, storing your regulated interaction data in an S3 bucket it's an unnecessary risk. You could disagree. Please feel free to comment if you do disagree so we can have a chat about it. But that's just our position on it. So continuity replay, it's not just storage. Yes, archiving is a big piece of it. Search and replay, like I said, simplicity is really awesome. It's something we pride ourselves on. But continuity replay isn't just storage. It's infrastructure, it's intelligence. It's built to manage the full life cycle of your interaction data, storing it securely, making it searchable, applying tagging, audit trails, legal hold. A new feature within the solution is creating views for different groupings so they can only see specific recordings. Excuse me. To surface insights from your data, to listen to it, to transcribe it, to analyze it, and to give, like I said, the right people access to it, to the right recordings at the right time. Now, this is especially critical when you're dealing with multiple legacy systems. We've talked before about dealing with siloed systems, or you're trying to merge your archives during a cloud migration. So, if someone tells you that storing your regulated interaction data in an S3 bucket is good enough, ask them how they're going to find a single call from 2018 in under 60 seconds, or explain to the auditor why there's no tagging, no access controls, and no documentation trail. I think that's when it clicks, that's when an organization realizes they don't just need storage, they need a solution. And something that I just mentioned right there, like, aligns really well with our whole a big part of our business model. This tends to be an afterthought in many capacities. They don't think it's going to happen to them. And then the challenge comes up, an auditor asks for a specific number of call recordings, or someone asks them to find a specific call from 2018 and under in a quick, short amount of time. And they can't. And then they scramble, and then they find us, and we help them because we're fast and flexible and adaptable. But this is just all about future proofing and thinking about that foundation for your data and modernizing from the core, like we talked about. So, flipping to my next page. Not too bad so far. Knock on wood. So really that objection is, like I said, something common that we hear often. But with continuity replay, where does that solution fall into? What's the category per se? And that's something we've struggled with. Like I said, it's super niche. To find an adequate term that's out in the world that adequately explains what continuity replay is and what it falls into and what the challenges that we're helping people solve fall into, it's tough. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit to the bigger picture. And the reality is that we're not just managing phone calls anymore. It's not just call recordings. We have a small box at our fingertips that allows us to communicate in a myriad of ways. Just the world of customer interaction data, it has evolved. It's not just voice, it's chat, it's email, video, screen share, SMS, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, web conferencing, social DMs. I can for sure go on if you want me to. If you challenge me to, I will. But the pressure to govern all of that consistently, securely, compliantly, just made a new word. It's growing fast. So that is where DCGA comes in, Digital Communications Governance and Archiving. It's not just a fancy term for storage. It's about ensuring every customer interaction, regardless of channel, is captured, it's contextualized, searchable, it's policy managed, and it's discoverable if needed. So it creates visibility across these different channels and does not just create volume in a vault. So that's critical there. That point I want to harp on, especially for industries with strict compliance obligations like financial services, like banking, healthcare, insurance, utilities. It goes back to what we were talking about in the last section. You have to be able to respond to audit and legal inquiries quickly. You have to preserve your records under retention and legal hold policies. You have to maintain role-based access and clear chain of custody. You have to support training and QA, not just compliance, So this applies to both historical or legacy data and production or real-time, near real. Wow, that was a mouthful. Near real-time data. There we go. So this is where I think Wilmac plays a critical role in how we fall into that DCGA category. So if you've listened to this podcast before, you know a bit about continuity replay, but I'm just going to reiterate it here. We are able to migrate and unlock recordings from old siloed legacy systems. Falls into the DCGA category. We're able to archive production data to connect with your contact center platform and archive that data, pull it regularly across multiple platforms. We're also enabling smart search, tagging, permissions, audit logs, and more. And all while keeping customers compliant, agile, and in control of their data. No locking things up. It's your data. You should be able to do with it what you'd like. So I'm not here to sell a better box. I'm here to help teams manage the full life cycle of interaction data across platforms, across time, and across the shifting regulatory landscape, because it changes quickly. And this is what modern customer interaction data governance looks like, and why it's quickly becoming a must-have layer in the CX and compliance tech stack. So, as you can tell, I'm passionate about it. Anyway, only 15 minutes, not too bad. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to fill that time, but that's all I've prepared to chat with you about today. I've exhausted my notes heavily. I'm sure multiple people have walked by me in the office and wondered why I'm talking to myself, but that's okay. I don't care. I'm happy to share about Wilmac and chat on the Wilmac Wire with you any day of the week. You just let me know. So I can go on if you want me to, but wherever you're listening to this, I want you to ask yourself a few questions. Actually, one question, more like it. Do we have control of our customer interaction data, or is it controlling us? I'm going to say it again so you can feel the weight. Do we have control of our customer interaction data, or is it controlling us? That's a deep question. I know, right? Probably too much for you to think about while you're cooking dinner, while you're driving to work, or going for a walk. Those are the typical things that I do when I listen to my podcasts. But you know what? I'd be remiss without asking it, because that's what Wilmac is all about, and hopefully why you're tuning in. So, like I mentioned at the top of the episode, this is our 32nd episode of the Wilmac Wire, Season 2, Episode 10. I'd really, really love your feedback on this podcast. We learn by doing here, and this is a part of what I'm learning about by doing. So we're still shaping what the Wilmac Wire is becoming, and you as our listeners are a huge part of that. So I want you to tell me, are there certain topics you'd love to hear more about? Do I say certain phrases or words too often? Am I too close to the mic? And please be honest, I can take it. I've been yelled at by coaches my whole life. Do you want more solo episodes like this where I can chat with you guys one-on-one, or more customer and partner stories? And hey, thought to put out there. Would you even want to be a guest? If you've got a story about modernizing CX, about solving compliance headaches, if you have a hot take on the industry, or you have just enjoyed working with us and want to share about your experience, or even better, you're navigating a really tough challenge that we can talk about, I'd really love to hear from you in the realm of customer interaction data, So seriously though, message me on LinkedIn. If you search Emily Miller Wilmac, you'll be able to find me. Shoot me an email, which we'll put in the notes of this episode, or just leave a comment wherever you listen, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're tuning in, you can leave a comment. So like I said, that didn't go too bad for a solo episode, huh? Not too shabby. All right. Thank you for listening to the Wilmac Wire, for tuning in with me, Emily Miller, today. And this was Season 2, Episode 10. Have a great one.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Wilmac Wire. Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform, or visiting our website at www.wilmactech.com. You can also watch the full video recordings of every episode on our YouTube channel. Thank you for being a part of our community, and again, thank you for listening to the Wilmac Wire.